Hello and welcome to Your Health Reclaimed with DrPND, where we help you reclaim your health with tips, tools, and resources to live your most optimal and vibrant life. Here's your host, DrPND.
Hello and welcome to Your Health Reclaimed. This is your host, Dr. PND. And today we're going to talk about a very, very favorite topic of mine, and that is bone health, and in particular, how to prevent and reverse, if you have to, osteoporosis, osteopenia, and sarcopenia. So that is a very obviously important topic. We're seeing a lot of progress in that aspect. A lot of people are struggling with that. I recently did the Weston A. Price Foundation. I was a guest speaker in one of their meetings, and I did a presentation, a PowerPoint presentation regarding that topic. And really, the turnout was amazing, and the feedback was amazing, because even though we know the statistics, and I see that with patients, it's really amazing how many people actually are struggling with that disease and how many people have it. So it's very important to truly understand the root cause of it and what to particularly do to be able to prevent it, which is a lot easier, or if you have to, reverse it, or at the very least greatly retard it from progressing. So let's begin with why does bone health matters? Well, bone density peaks in your 20s usually, and then starts to decline 0.5 to 1% per year after midlife, faster after menopause for women. Osteoporosis ultimately equals weak, brittle bones. It affects the hip, the spine. Wrist fractures are common. Most common obviously with falls and stuff. But the impact ultimately is a loss of independence, and ultimately also higher mortality after major fractures, which a lot of people are aware of that. The problem is it's a silent condition. There really are no symptoms until the fracture occurs. Currently, 1 in 3 women and 1 in 5 men over the age of 50 will experience an osteoporotic fracture. It is directly proportional in increase with the chronic disease epidemic that we have in this country. Okay, the 2 main causative factors were and still are poor diet from introduction of processed foods, as early starting in the early 1900s. And number 2, the lack of daily physical labor with the advent of an increasing in the ever-evolving technological advances. Basically, we sit all day, we don't really move much, and when we do move, it is limited range of motions with no resistance or any kind of substantial load. So basically, sitting in a 90-degree chairs, toilets, beds, couches, cars, etc., and really not moving a lot and not lifting heavy things is a massive causative factor as well. It is a dreaded disease. The cost is very high, costs billions annually in healthcare. And as everybody knows, traditional treatments include medications, supplements, lifestyle changes, and often these really do not fully restore bone health because A, they're done inadequately, and or usually only one treatment is initiated, usually with medications, and medications do not really do anything. They do not increase bone muscle or muscle density and bone density at all. So therefore, they do not really do anything much to prevent that, unfortunately. I want to go over to to discuss what's called the triage theory of nutrient deficiencies. So as I said, the first causative factor is poor nutrition. Okay, so the triage theory of nutrient deficiency ultimately tells us how nutrient deficiencies lead to disease and premature aging. Excuse me. When our bodies face a shortage of essential vitamins, minerals, and any other micronutrients, the body must make a choice on how to use this limited supply. It behaves much like a crisis manager, deciding which functions to prioritize and which to neglect based on immediate survival and reproductive needs. Your body prioritizes the use of scarce vitamins and minerals and other micronutrients for proteins and enzymes that are crucial for immediate survival, obviously in reproduction. Meanwhile, proteins and enzymes that are important for long-term health, which help prevent gradual damage that might contribute to bone strength or cardiovascular health, for instance, they receive fewer of these nutrients. Because longevity proteins are neglected during shortages, damage accumulates very slowly over a long period of time, typically without any obvious symptoms at all, at first at least. But over time, this ongoing damage can and does lead to disease, commonly associated with aging, such as heart disease, high blood pressure, obviously sarcopenia, and osteoporosis, which becomes apparent only later in life. So I hope you guys understand that triage theory of nutrient deficiency, how the body prioritizes its survival. That is why it's so insidiously slow when disease develops, chronic disease develops, because you don't see it, you don't feel it. And again, it takes a long, long time to develop. Then this is why nutrition, proper, healthy human, optimized nutrition is so, so important. And this is, again, one of the causative factors when it comes to osteoporosis. So, as I said before, the damage is insidiously slow, and that is, really so hard to understand that. There was a paper that was published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, PNAS, and it explains that the triage theory provides an unifying rationale for why modest vitamin, mineral, antioxidant deficiencies, which ultimately insufficient to elicit overt symptoms of severe deficiency, will contribute significantly to the aging process and the disease of aging. So briefly, the triage theory posits that a strategic rationing response has been selected in our physiology, which ensures that when a moderate shortage of vitamin, mineral, any of the micronutrients is encountered, the scarce resource is preferentially retained by those vitamin, mineral, micronutrient-dependent proteins and enzymes that are essential for the survival and reproduction. Example, would be essential for early development, and immediate survival, in the child developing, for instance. So at the same time, those proteins and enzymes needed to maintain long-term health by preventing insidious damage are starved for the vitamin, mineral, micronutrient and become increasingly inactive, therefore leading to an increase in disease of aging. A major aspect of this degenerative aging is that the damage is insidious, as I said before, and clinically not obvious because it accumulates slowly, very slowly, over a long period of time. And then and then only it literally becomes apparent in life, which people get diagnosed with something. So the connection to micronutrient shortages is severely underappreciated. That's why in functional medicine, holistic health, natural health, whatever it might be, you always hear micronutrient insufficiency or subclinical deficiency, and not necessarily what's called a clinical deficiency. Clinical deficiency, if it's a true clinical deficiency, there will be symptoms usually, and or blood panels and other tests will be able to show that. With insufficiencies and also, low grade subclinical deficiencies, you can't tell a lot of times. And a lot of physicians and, even nutritionists are really not understanding those principles and not trained in how to catch those insufficiencies. So that's something that, I want to take time to really talk about, because obviously, if you have been listening to my podcast, nutrition is the fundamental basis and staple of everything we do. That's why, given the nutrient deficiencies are so common, improving your diet and using high quality clinical grade supplements to ensure that an adequate intake of these longevity vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, and micronutrients in general could potentially help reduce the risk of chronic disease and delay premature aging. So always keep that in mind. Okay, this is something that is extremely important. Now, another problem I want to talk about, and another factor, is what's called the gut-bone/musculoskeletal axis. So you guys have heard the gut-brain axis, gut-lung, gut-heart, gut-skin axis, and so forth. But you don't really often hear about the gut-bone and musculoskeletal system axis. So what's important here is that it's not only what you eat obviously, but what you can digest, assimilate, absorb, and utilize. There are four main problems when it comes to digestion that I see with people all the time. You have insufficient hydrochloric acid and bile acids, insufficient digestive and pancreatic enzymes, some form of dysbiosis and or pathogenicity, and gut barrier dysfunctional intestinal permeability, what people usually know as leaky gut. So when you hear gut barrier dysfunction and or intestinal permeability, that's AKA leaky gut. So digestion is extremely important, obviously, on any terrain, and has to be addressed. Now, the second problem that we talked about is the lack of proper movement or the proper loaded movement, and this is why progressive heavy resistance training works so well. So let's dive into that a little bit. Why resistance training actually works? Well, Wolff's law, if you ever heard of it, it says bone adapts to the loads that are placed upon it, mechanical stress. So heavy lifting creates mechanical strain, which in turn stimulates osteoblasts, aka mechanostimulation. So muscle pulls on the bones, and that causes a powerful growth signal stimulus. Strength training improves balance, coordination, posture, which ultimately equals fewer falls, safer falls if they do occur. And if something does break, the recovery is much shorter. That's why resistance training is extremely important. Now, there are 11 aspects of fitness, generally speaking. Okay, that's body composition, cardiovascular endurance, flexibility, muscular endurance, agility, balance, coordination, reaction time, speed, power, and strength. Strength affects each one of those other 10 directly and is the most important one. Always remember that strength reigns supreme. There's a saying, the strength is never a weakness. So the rest also, the other 10 aspects of fitness always hinge on strength. And that's why high intensity strength training affects all of them proportionally. It is very important. I've seen it when we used to do personal training, strength and conditioning in our facility back in the day. I've seen it with clients all the time. I still see it now. Is a lot of people that have a balance issue when they walk, when they're elderly, they have to use a cane. They used to use a walker of some kind, or like a semi wheelchair type of mobility device. It is almost always because they are weak, unless they have a neurological issue of some kind. It is almost always because they are weak and they cannot support their body properly and react. That's when you see people slumped over, they shuffle their feet. They do not have the strength to be able to walk properly, and therefore obviously affects their coordination, their balance, their reaction time, muscular endurance, and everything else. So strength reigns supreme. Okay, when it comes to prevention of sarcopenia, which is the loss of muscle, when he's talking about prevention of osteopenia, which is that's what the prelude to osteoporosis, and ultimately osteoporosis, strength training, high intensity progressive resistance training will always reign supreme because it is extremely important. Now, here's evidence and research, because I know a lot of you guys like that. So there's plenty of that, but the latest one here is actually a meta-analysis of high-intensity resistance training and show how it increases bone mineral density. The study itself is called Lift More, LIFTMOR trial. You can Google it on the Google Scholar. And it's looked for actually older adults. So when they lifted heavy resistance training, their bone mineral density and the spine and hip increased, muscle strength and size and function of performance increased. There was no reported injuries with proper supervision whatsoever. Resistance training done properly is much better than walking or light exercise for bone preservation, and superior for reversing osteoporosis or osteopenia. That's the bottom line. As a matter of fact, if you swim, walk, jog, you're not gonna, you might prevent that, But if you already have osteoporosis, you will not reverse that by walking, running, and or swimming. It has to have a strong mechanical stimulus. And the only way you're going to get that is through proper heavy resistance training. So the LIFT-MORE trial was really a key study of heavy lifting and bone, not just exercise, but actual heavy lifting. The full name of the study is called Lifting Intervention for Training, Muscle, and Osteoporosis Rehabilitation. The population was postmenopausal women aged 58 to 70 with low bone mass. Intervention was 8 months, only twice a week, 45 minutes at a time, heavy resistance plus impact training. So what are the exercises that they did? Well, they did deadlifts, squats, overhead presses, some form of jumping, chin-ups or drop landings, or some machine that allowed to do that. And the loads were 80 to 85% of one repetition maximum. So the load the intensity is the key here. It's not just the exercise, but it's also the key is the intensity, because that's where the stimulus comes in from heavy training. When you talk about 80 to 85% of your one rep maximum, that is a very high intensity for most people. And this is what really the golden key is, and really that holy grail, if you want to call it, of the prevention and reversal of osteoporosis, the heavy resistance and training. I'll give you people say, what is the one rep max? Let me give you an example. Okay, so say you can bench press 100 pounds for only one rep. You can't do anything more than that. That's all out effort. Well, 80 to 85% of that is going to be 80 to 85 pounds, which usually people can do anywhere from 2 to 5, even 6 repetitions, depending. So ultimately, it is a challenging weight. Same thing if you're doing a barbell or a dumbbell curl and you can lift, say, 10 pounds, strictly for one rep only, then 8 to 8.5 pounds will be the weights that you should be using to do whatever repetitions you can with that. Now, the control did low intensity, light, home-based exercises, which were yoga, stretching, Pilates, body squats, push-ups, off chair, counter, calisthenics, sit-ups, and little chair and box squats. So what happened? Well, again, bone mineral density greatly increased in the lumbar spine, then the femoral neck in the high intensity groups. Muscle strength increased, functional performance increased, no fractures or serious injuries occurred with the proper supervision. This was the first strong evidence that heavy lifting is safe, effective, and it's a must for older adults with osteoporosis. The same goes, by the way, for osteopenia, of course, and also for sarcopenia, which, remember, sarcopenia is muscle loss. And this study clearly demonstrated the potential to reverse and or prevent bone loss. Organizations like the ACSM, World Osteoporosis Foundation, the AACE, which is the American Association of Clinical Endocrinologists, all of them have comprehensive evidence-based statements about exercise strategies regarding high-intensity resistance and progressive and impact training for osteoporosis. So it is well documented, well supported. Even before those studies came out, I've been in the strength and conditioning and the personal training industry since 1997. And for my mentors that I studied from, they have seen it with their clients. I have seen it with the clients numerous times. And it does work. There's no doubt about it. The problem is a lot of people, as always, don't like to work hard. Look, anything in life that is worth having or doing is going to require effort, and a lot of times quite a bit of it. There is no easy lunch, let alone free lunch. There is not. You have to put in the work you have to do. You have to change your diet. You have to do the resistance training. Once or twice a week, preferably, but that's all it takes. So it's not like somebody's asking you to work out every single day for an hour a day with heavy weights. They're not. Twice a week, 45 to 60 minutes tops. And for most people, that'll be 40 or 45 minutes, really. And you're going to get those benefits. So There really is no excuse, but at the same time, you have to understand what it takes. And that's why I'm so adamant about that subject, because a lot of people are under severe misconception that, well, I go to the gym, I walk, 10, 20,000 steps a day. Who cares? You might as well stay home. It's not going to, when it comes to reversing osteoporosis, it's not going to do anything. Yes, of course, there are benefits to walking that much. Of course, there are benefits in swimming and yoga and Pilates, even doing some, light resistance training. Of course, there's always benefit to the cardiovascular system and other benefits. But when it comes to reversing bone, issues like osteoporosis, osteopenia, putting on muscle, slowing down and reversing the muscle loss that comes with age for so many people, the weakness and debility that comes with that, nothing else is going to do it. Yeah. I have seen it with so many clients over the years. People that, did it, they made it happen, they did great. Family members, friends, they refused to do it. They were active, they did the walking, they did the little Zumbas, classes, they did the aerobics, they did the cardiovascular exercise, whatever that might have been, including yoga, including Pilates. And as they aged, 10, 20, 30 years later, you saw the massive difference in the physical debility. And regardless, those people walked every day, swam, did whatever else. Were they obviously better than the people that stay on the couch all day and had no activity? Of course. But still, they were weak and they degenerated faster and they did not have the quality of life. I can show you to this day people that I've known for the last 30 years that are still living proof of that. So I just really want to try to get that message across, and I really hope I am, because it's a hard concept to comprehend for some reason for most people. Then they get under a severe delusion that just they go to the gym, do a little bit of cardio, mess around with little machines there, break a little sweat for 30 minutes or an hour, and then they go home and they think that they've done great. They waste their time at that point. It does not work. It will not work. So when it comes to, doing it, obviously safety considerations. Start slow, start light, learn proper form. That's why it's called progressive resistance. You're not going to go in there and never lifted a weight before, start squatting, deadlifting, and lifting heavy weights if you don't know how. Hire a personal trainer. Hire someone who has the competency to be able to walk you through and show you how to do things right. Once you learn, you can be completely self-sufficient. Okay. There are plenty of gyms out there in this whole nation that can provide those services, and they have the equipment, they have the atmosphere, and they most certainly have the personnel to be able to walk you through that. Like anything else, you might have to search to find a really good person that you like, which you click, but invest in that. Personal training is not an expensive, really, expense. The industry I've been in for so long, it's not a big money maker for people that practice that. Okay, they're not in it for the money, believe me. And it's very affordable, relatively speaking. And we're not talking about you continuing to do that for years on end. You most certainly can. Okay, you most certainly can if you can afford it, if you want to. But I'm talking hiring somebody for maybe 2-3 months to learn, become proficient at it, and go on your own. And if you ever need a tune-up, you can always get a few sessions here, a few sessions there. So, please consider that. All right, so let's go ahead and move on to supporting nutrition and lifestyle. All right. Well, protein. Okay, that's a topic has been beat to death. I get that. Protein, there's general requirements, but the reality is that it really depends on a person's lifestyle, their stress level, their ability to eat quality food, their ability to digest and assimilate protein, as I said before. So it varies. Yes, optimally, you'll be getting 0.8 to 1 gram of pure protein per lean pound of body mass. So, you have to do your body composition and generally get an idea of what is your lean body mass. And that will be, if you're resistance training heavily, 0.8 to 1 gram per lean pound of body mass. So say somebody weighs 200 pounds and your body mass comes up at body fat percentage comes up at 25%. Just give you an example. So the body fat percentage, what does that mean? That means you have 50 pounds of fat, give or take. Well, your lean body mass at 200 pounds and 25% body fat is going to give you 150 pounds of lean body mass. So your goal be, anyway from, let's see, you have 0.8 times 150. So anyway from 120 to 150 grams of protein per day, give or take. Some days you might meet that, some days you won't, but consistency is the key. You don't have to be perfect. So let me go over this again. 0.8 to 1 gram of protein per lean body mass. So if, again, say you weigh, make it simple, you weigh 100 pounds, which you'll be either very petite and little or severely underweight, but say you weigh 100 pounds and you're 10% body fat, then is 90 pounds is lean muscle mass. You'll be ingesting, again, 0.8 to 1 gram. And if you weigh, less than, I'll go for the higher grammage to 1 gram. So that'll be about, 80 to 90 grams of protein per day. If your lean body mass is 90, you can see what your lean body mass is or with body fat percentages by going to a trainer at a gym or go to, places that can do that for you. There's different methods. You can even get simpler ones, the skin fold calipers, and they'll give you a general idea of what that is. If you go to any gym to hire a trainer, they'll be able to measure that for you and give you an idea what is your lean body mass. Okay, so I hope that kind of makes sense. If that's confusing, reach out to me and I'll show you a formula. I'll send you an email with the breakdown so you can understand. I know some people are more visual than others. So protein, again, it supports bone and muscle repair. There's a big myth. Just because someone eats highest quality and quantity daily of animal protein does not mean that they're not protein deficient. I see protein deficiency all the time. How do I catch that? Well, I do a test called organic metabolomics, urine and plasma, and among many other things like neuroendocrine hormones and neurotransmitters, vitamins, minerals, detoxification cycles, and so forth. It measures also amino acids in the blood. The amino acids in the blood usually will correlate with amino acids in the urine. I like the amino acids in the blood, but urine will be fine too. Either way, I can tell if somebody's deficient in amino acids. So usually what that means that, as I said before at the beginning of the podcast, when you have digestive insufficiency of some kind, whether it's low hydrochloric acid and bile acids and or deficiency of digestive and pancreatic enzymes, you are not going to be able to break down and assimilate and obviously utilize the protein. So how do you counteract that? Well, use a very high quality amino acid supplement, which they're basically free form amino acids. They're all natural. And the body doesn't have to digest them. They'll go and be absorbed within minutes into your bloodstream. That's a very, very efficient method. They're also really good for recovery, for training. I use them myself during heavy, intense training workouts. You guys have seen, probably heard BCAAs or brain chain amino acids. There's a company called Body Health. They make a product called Perfect Amino. Perfect Aminos is hands down the best supplement I've ever had and use with myself and my clients all the time for amino acid product. They have different flavors, they have tablets, but if you're not sure if you're absorbing a protein and you don't want to do a test to find out, you can never go wrong with adding additional amino acids. But be very cognizant of that because protein deficiency is a real problem, even for people who say they eat. Second thing is, again, depending how your digestion is, but if you're vegan or vegetarian, you are protein deficient. I can promise you that. Yeah, if you don't believe me, contact me. I'll test you and I'll prove it. So you have to be very careful of meeting that protein demand. Again, we're talking about elderly people 50, 60 plus. I'm not referring to somebody who's an athlete or a collegiate or high school athlete or let alone professional athlete who's vegan or vegetarian. We're not talking about those. Obviously, they don't have problems, although they might. But we're talking about folks who are predisposed to, those debilitating diseases, and they're older. Okay, so proper supplementation when needed can do, very, very, can take you a long way. Another thing is avoid smoking and alcohol consumption. All ethanol consumption. I don't care if it's your organic, biodynamic, sulfate-free, wine at night, it's got to go. Especially if you have osteopenia, osteoporosis, sarcopenia, alcohol has got to go, at least for the time being. Definitely cut it out or cut down. If you're still healthy and relatively young and you don't have those issues, you'll do well to take that out. I always say that alcohol is never a good thing. Alcohol causes slow cooking damage, what we call a slow grind damage. And just like the nutritional deficiencies, it takes time to show up. But I've never seen a truly healthy elderly person who has been a chronic drinker all their life. Okay. So just keep that in mind. Adequate sleep for recovery and hormone balance is absolutely essential. Not only so you can build bone more efficiently and muscle more efficiently, but also, hormonal balance and regulation. Sleep for recovery is essential. Sleep is going to be a gem on any aspect regardless. That is one of the staples when it comes to holistic medicine. So keep those things in mind. There are diagnostic biomarkers and clinical indicators of osteoporosis, which, something can be confirmed. There's, you can do a comprehensive full thyroid panel, which there's about over 11 different markers, not the usual 2 or 3, maybe 4 that, most people get prescribed that are pretty worthless. It has to be a comprehensive full panel. There's literally 11 or 12 markers depending on what the person needs for thyroid. Look at your estrogens, testosterone, the total and free, progesterone and DHEA, extremely important. Low estrogen will, without fail, so low testosterone will exacerbate muscle loss and also osteoporosis. Do a lipid-soluble vitamin panel. Very important. That's your vitamin A, retinol. That's your vitamin E, vitamin K1, vitamin D3. What's called, there's 2 kinds. There's the vitamin D25 hydroxy and the calcitriol 125 hydroxide vitamin D, which that's the active form of vitamin D. But fat-soluble vitamins, or what are called lipid-soluble vitamins, are extremely important. Everybody knows vitamin D is important for bones and for calcium absorption, but the other lipid-soluble vitamins are extremely important. So obviously, don't guess, test, and addressing those deficiencies makes a massive difference. And they're very, very inexpensive and very easy to address. The DEXA scanner, DXA scan, obviously is the gold standard for immediate osteoporosis diagnosis, or osteopenia. It's called a T-score. So when you have a minus 2.5 or lower, indicates osteoporosis. A lot of those DEXA scan machines, when you go to like your gynecologist or endocrinologist, your doctor in general, depending, they also have in that software, that machine is also able to do a body mass analysis. So they'll give you one of the most accurate body composition and mass analysis, really, along with the bone scan. So always ask, because it's not expensive, and oftentimes insurance covers. So they'll give you, in addition to the bone density, will give you the ability to find out what is your lean body mass and fat mass in their ratio, as we said before. So they'll give you the ability to know what your protein requirement per day is, if you remember. So the skin fold caliper, some of the higher end biological impedance scales can generally give you a general idea, but the DEXA scan machine, if it does have the software in it, it'll give you the most accurate one, generally speaking, too. It's very easy, very fast, because you get it done at the same time you're getting a bone mineral density scan. So always ask your physician, or whoever you go to, get that done. There are also urine tests and blood tests that can get really complex, like what's called the Perling's D urine collagen type 1 C telepeptide, or the CTX. It's a blood test. Amino terminal propeptide of type 1 collagen, or it's called P1, and NP, it's a blood test. Collagen cross-linked N telepeptide, or NTX, the urine test. If you want to truly confirm the diagnosis, but they're really not necessary. So let's go real quick back to the lipid-soluble vitamins and what are generally considered optimal levels, not what deficiency cutoff lines are, because that's insufficiency. It's not good. You want to be optimal. So vitamin D hydroxy, vitamin D25 hydroxy test, you want it to be around 80 nanograms per deciliter. The other vitamin D test, the calcitriol, you want it to be between 45 and 60 nanograms per deciliter. Vitamin E is going to be 10 to 15 micrograms per milliliter. Vitamin K1 is going to be 2 to 2.5 nanograms per microliter. And vitamin A retinol, you want it to be between 50 and 60 micrograms per milliliter. So you have nanograms and milligrams, micrograms, just be cognizant of that, but you'll see the values there. So supplementing based on blood values is best. Remember, don't guess, test. It will take about 9 to 120 days for blood levels to be changed on the blood fat-soluble vitamins. So keep that in mind, and it's always a good idea to repeat the test every 3 to 4 months to see where you're at. And once you have a baseline and you know this is what optimal levels are, it's easy to maintain. The very minimally, you should test those levels once a year to know where you're at. So let's talk a little about supplements. As I said before, in reality, when somebody has let alone deficiency, but insufficiency or subclinical deficiency, it is very hard to address certain nutrients, micronutrients, and vitamins, minerals, and so forth with just food. Okay, it is. Once you have that low levels, it takes a long time, and oftentimes, again, depending on digestion and so forth, you won't be able to even come close to that. So the supplements that are good are vitamin D3. Always take that with vitamin K1 and K2. Magnesium, okay, the forms of malate and glycinate are among the best and, easiest, the ones that are the best tolerated and work in broad spectral aspect. Vitamin E complex, especially tocotrienols, stay away from alpha tocopherol. You don't want to do that. Stick to tocotrienols. Vitamin A retinol, whole food vitamin C complex. And again, they all depend on blood markers. But the products that I use most often, with our clients, is a product called ADK Evail, and that has the vitamin D3, vitamin K1, K2, and also vitamin E, tocotrienols. And obviously, it's a perfect combination in the natural ratio complex that usually occurs in food. So ADK Evail, if you just want the vitamin D, or if you need extra vitamin D3 because you're low, there's a product called D Evail 10K. 10 stands for 10,000, international units, and that's obviously taken temporarily while you build up your levels, because some people need very high amounts, and they are hyporesponders, as opposed to some people are hyperresponders, and they need relatively little supplementation and not as often. And you can take them, pretty quickly. They can get the levels up to optimally. And when they test, they're good. And some people might need to go up to 20, 30 international units of vitamin D3, for example, per day for a couple of months to be able to start bringing those levels up. It all depends. But these are the products that I use. If somebody's deficient in vitamin E, I use a product called Anato E300. It is extremely good. It's a pure tocotrienol product made from the palm fruit. One of the best natural sources of vitamin E, very highly absorbable. But there's also a product called BRF45, and actually in Japan, it's a K2 product, vitamin K2, and in Japan, it's actually used as a prescription medication strictly for osteoporosis. If some people have severe vitamin K deficiency, and or they cannot absorb it, and or they do not eat or cannot eat the foods that are found. that vitamin is found in. So it really all depends what you need. The best thing is, again, test. The supplement that does the best is the magnesium malate with the glycinate and the ADK Avail product, because that's generally 99% of the people who benefit from it, and you can't really overdo it. And usually when you test after 90 to 120 days, people see great improvement, and a lot of times even they'll be optimal. But you can get those that are very inexpensive, relatively speaking. So that's something that you can look into. When it comes to essential nutrients for osteoporosis, okay, obviously diet is extremely important. You have to address the gut, like we talked about. But when it comes to food sources, calcium, that is the foundation for bone mineralization. Organic, raw, pasture-raised dairy, leafy greens, whether they're cooked, prepared properly, high quality, clinical grade supplements like we discussed. But raw, organic, pasture-raised dairy is one of the best sources of calcium, because it also has a phosphatase enzyme that has not been destroyed due to pasteurization or heat. And that really helps to absorb calcium and phosphorus very well into the body, very efficient. Of course, if you can't tolerate dairy for allergic or sensitive, that's not going to be an issue for you. But sardines with the skin and bone on, wild-caught sardines in water or olive oil, phenomenal source as well. Again, leafy greens, but some people don't really digest those. Again, they can have sensitivity. Some of those have oxalates in them, that people have oxalate sensitivity. So you really have to see what is it that works for you. Okay. Vitamin D3, as we discussed, that aids in calcium absorption. Well, natural sunlight done properly, fatty fish like, again, sardines and wild-caught salmon, raw dairy, organic pasture-raised yolks from eggs is a very good source. But that too, again, it really depends what is the right food for you. Sunlight is essential. For most people, sunlight done safely, done properly, is one of the best sources. But of course, if you live in a northern climate or the season is off, you will have to rely on supplementation and proper foods. So the less of these foods you're able to eat, or foods that contain those, and the quality of those foods, the more supplementation you are going to need. Just the way it is. As we talked about protein, that's meat, dairy, legumes, nuts, properly soaked, prepared properly. But eggs, obviously, fish, seafood, but meat, eggs, seafood, poultry, remember, will always be superior to nuts, seeds, legumes, and so forth. That's the fact. Vitamin K1 and vitamin K2, okay, that directs calcium into the bones, basically, not the arteries. That's why it's so important. Things like fermented foods, like annatto, certain, tofu, certain cheeses, obviously egg yolks, different fermented foods have those. That varies and really depends on the source. Again, that's why supplementation is very important on those, especially because a lot of people are deficient, but nobody tests for those. So vitamin D3, luckily, the last 15 years has become a pretty common test on the general medical practice that people test, but they don't test for anything else. And there's the other lipid, fat soluble vitamins that you have to test to see where you're at, because you can also cause a severe misalignment and imbalance of especially if you're just taking vitamin D3 by itself. Nobody should ever take vitamin D3 by itself without vitamin K ever. This is a really bad practice. It causes a lot of potential problems, especially for hypersensitive individuals. Phosphorus, that's, again, works with calcium for strong bones, extremely important mineral. Phosphorus can be easily tested on a standard blood panel if you look for it. It's not expensive at all. Zinc, that too supports bone tissue growth and repair, and that too is found in meat, shellfish, legumes and stuff like that. But that too has to be tested, and use the plasma zinc. It's more accurate, and as opposed to serum, and see where you're at, and if you need to, supplement. While you're at it, it's always good to look at copper, serum copper, because that tool will show you if you have an imbalance or inadequacy. A lot of times people have an overload of copper, which can cause other problems, which we're not going to get into. But it's just a really good way to know. Doing a comprehensive micronutrient blood test, it will serve you really well on all levels. And it's not that expensive, relatively speaking, because you will never have to guess, and you can see exactly what is it you need, what is it you don't need, and how well balanced and nourished ultimately you are. So that's why I always say, test, don't guess. Okay. So what are the takeaways? Bone loss is not inevitable. Okay. It is a completely preventable aspect. And it's also, if caught early, it can be reversed. Heavy resistance training is safe, effective, absolutely necessary, possible at any age. It has to be done correctly, with the proper intensity being the holy grail here. Remember, we talked about 80 to 85% intensity. Intensity. That's why it's called high-intensity progressive resistance training. That can be done with barbells, dumbbells, kettlebells, cables, high-tension bands, machines, obviously. Whatever works for you, just do it. Okay? Free weights are always going to reign supreme. The simple fact that when you lift a free weight, whether it's a barbell, dumbbell, or kettlebell, you're lifting in a three-dimensional pattern, which mimics what the body functions in, as opposed to machines functioning in a two-dimensional plane. So you're not getting the full benefit when it comes to muscular stimulation, but when it comes to bone stimulation, you still are. So don't let that deter you if you cannot do certain lifts with free weights and or feel more comfortable or have only access to machines. You can still get a great workout and, accomplish, that particular goal. So this is it for today. If you guys have any questions, go to DrPND.com, DrPND.com, send me an email, ask me questions. And if I can answer them, I'll gladly do so. If it's anything regarding this podcast here, I'll gladly answer it for you. And when you go to DrPND.com, you can go to my store link, which will take you there, and you'll be able to purchase any of the supplements that I mentioned. Also, if you purchase from me, you will always have, as long as you purchase from me, unlimited support regarding that supplement or that product that you purchase, a supplement, when you purchase from me. That's something that, I extend my services completely to people that use my store and they purchase from me. And they get my support when it comes to custom dosing, suggestions for dosing patterns and frequencies and so forth, or other supplements. So guys, remember, it is not inevitable. You don't have to succumb to it. Even if you're a male, you generally are healthy. You don't have to worry about osteoporosis. You'll never go wrong with strength training. Time will fail me to sit here and give you the benefits, but heavy resistance progressive training protocol executed in a safe, effective manner, once to twice a week, twice being optimal, it will serve you for the rest of your life in many other aspects, not just bone health. So just keep that in mind. Anyway, this is it for today. Again, this is Dr. PND, your host with Your Health Reclaimed. I had a great time. I hope you guys enjoy this webinar. If you have any questions, please reach out to me and I'll gladly answer them if I can. Until next time, have a great day.
Thank you for your valuable time and for listening to the Your Health Reclaimed podcast with Dr. PND. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and share this episode with a person you know it can help. If we can help you in any way, or you would like to connect with Dr. PND, please visit drpnd.com. That's drpnd.com.